All right, so today we're diving deep into something that, at first glance, might seem kind of basic.
Yeah.
Land use, fields, cities, forests, you get the picture.
Familiar stuff.
Exactly. But get ready, because this deep dive, well, it's taking us all the way to space.
Sure, space.
You heard right. We're talking about a company called Farmonaut
Yeah.
and how they're using some seriously mind-blowing tech to, well, kind of revolutionize how we grow food using satellites.
Wow, okay, so we're talking about like the future of farming here.
Exactly. And it all starts with this article we found all about land use, how we categorize what we use land for urban planning, environmental stuff, the whole shebang.
Okay, I'm intrigued because we're going from basic land use to space-age farming.
See, that's the cool part. This article, it starts with those categories, labeling land for different uses, but then it dives into how this seemingly simple idea, it can have massive impacts.
Like on a global scale.
Exactly. Global. Like, think about food supply, something that affects everyone.
Right, and it's not just about, drawing lines on a map and saying this is for farming, that's a city. It's about understanding the consequences, the ripple effects of those choices.
And that's where Farmonaut comes in, right? They're using satellite imagery.
Satellites.
Yeah, to analyze farmland in a way that's, well, let's just say it's light years beyond just seeing if a field is green or brown.
So they're taking this bird's eye view, literally, and doing what exactly?
Imagine giving farmers this superpower, right? This X-ray vision for their crops, and it all comes down to this thing called NDVI.
NDVI. Okay, you're losing me a little. Yeah.
All right, so NDVI stands for Normalized Difference Vegetation Index. Basically, it's a way to analyze how plants reflect light, and that tells us a ton about their health, any stress they're under, even if there is disease.
So, like a health check, but from space.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it all happens without setting foot in the field.
Okay, so break it down for me. How does this NDVI thing actually work?
So, get this. Healthy plants, they absorb more visible light and reflect more near-infrared light. And NDVI, it measures that difference, giving us this, numerical snapshot of how the plant's doing.
So, Farmonaut takes this data from the satellites and then beams it down to the farmer's smartphone.
Well, it's not just smartphones, though. I'm sure they have an app for that.
Right, of course.
They've developed this whole AI platform. They call it Jeevan. And that's where things get really interesting.
AI, now we're talking.
Right. So Jeevan takes all that data from the satellites, crunches the numbers, and gives farmers specific, actionable insights.
So instead of eyeballing their crops, they're getting, what, like personalized recommendations?
Exactly. And it's not just plant this here. It's about using resources smarter, which, let's be real, is a big deal these days.
Yeah, especially with everything going on, water shortages, climate change.
And that's where this whole thing gets really impressive. They're not just telling you what to do, they're helping you do it better, more efficiently, for the good of, well, everyone. And it's like this whole efficiency thing, it's woven into everything Farmonaut does.
Oh, absolutely.
They even mentioned using, get this, blockchain technology.
Blockchain. Now that's interesting.
Right. You usually hear about it with cryptocurrency and stuff.
Yeah, Bitcoin, all that.
Exactly. So how does that even fill in with farming?
Well, think of it this way. Blockchain is like this super secure way to track and verify stuff.
Right. Okay.
So with Farmonaut, they can use it to track things like how much water a farm uses, what kind of fertilizer, even where the seeds came from. Yeah. And it's all tamper-proof.
So it's like proof, right? Farmers can actually show that they're doing things sustainably.
Exactly. And these days, consumers really care about that.
Oh, yeah. Everyone wants to know where their food comes from.
Right. And how it's grown. Is it ethical? All of that.
So it's like this digital seal of approval saying, hey, this farm is doing things the right way.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And it all ties back to what we were saying about, categorizing land use.
Right.
Farmonaut takes those basic categories and then adds all this detailed real-time information on top so we get a much clearer picture of how that land is actually being used.
It's amazing to me how this technology that a few decades ago would have been science fiction is now having the huge impact on something as essential as, growing food.
It really shows you the power of human ingenuity, right?
Yeah.
But it also highlights something important. Satellites give you this big, broad view, which is great.
Right.
But sometimes you need to zoom in, get a closer look.
Okay.
And that's where these other technologies come in. Like, remember that chart in the article comparing satellites to drones and those IoT sensors?
Oh, yeah. That was like a tech showdown. So which one comes out on top?
Well, it depends on what you're trying to do.
Right. Makes sense.
Satellites, like what Farmonaut uses, they're perfect for seeing the big picture, Like, is there a drought in this region? How are the crops doing overall?
But if you need to see like each individual plant or even pests, I'd imagine drones would be better for that.
Exactly. Drones can capture these super high resolution images so you can spot problems early on.
And what about those IoT sensors? Aren't those more for like real-time monitoring?
Exactly. You've got it. They're like little data collectors scattered throughout the field, constantly measuring things like soil moisture, temperature, all that good stuff.
So it sounds like each technology has its own strengths and weaknesses. It's not really about one being better than the other.
Right. It's about choosing the right tool for the job. And often, the best approach is to use them together.
Like a high-tech tag team. This deep dive has really opened my eyes to how technology is changing the game for agriculture and how it all comes back to this basic idea of understanding our land.
It's amazing, isn't it? How we can take something so fundamental and, with a little ingenuity, use it to tackle some of the biggest challenges we face.
Like feeding a growing population, dealing with climate change, all that.
Exactly. And it makes you wonder, where do we go from here? As we rely more and more on AI, on data, what role do we as humans play in shaping the future of food?
That's a big question, and honestly, I don't know the answer, but it's definitely something to think about.
Right. It's not just about the technology, it's about the choices we make.
Well said. Well said. This deep dive has certainly given us a lot to chew on.
Knuckles.
It's incredible how something like land use can lead us down this rabbit hole of satellites and AI and, the very future of what we eat.
It's a wild world out there.
If you're as fascinated by this as we are, we encourage you to check out Farmonaut, see the amazing work they're doing. And hey, next time you look up at the night sky, remember those little points of light up there? They might just be helping to grow your next meal. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, and until next time, keep exploring. Yeah, it's like they all work together, right?
It's really fascinating when you think about it that way. Yeah, like a symphony of tech.
Totally. And this deep dive, I feel like we've just scratched the surface of how technology is like reshaping agriculture.
Oh, absolutely. And it all comes back to that core
Yeah.
idea of understanding our land, how we use it, how we manage it.
It's like we often take land for granted, but it's literally the foundation of everything.
It really is. And what Farmonaut's doing, it's not just about boosting yields or, making things more efficient.
Right.
It's about ensuring that we can actually keep feeding people sustainably in a world that's, let's face it, changing pretty rapidly.
And that brings us to, I think, a really important question from the article. And it's something that's been on my mind a lot lately with all this AI stuff.
Yeah, what's that?
So, as we become more and more reliant on AI, on these data-driven solutions, what role do we as humans actually play in all of this? Like, in the future of food, are we just along for the ride?
It's a huge question. And honestly, I don't think there's an easy answer, but I do think it's a conversation we need to be having.
100%. Because it's not just about the technology itself, right? It's about the choices we make, how we choose to use it.
Exactly. It's about finding that balance
Yeah.
between, harnessing the power of these advancements while still like maintaining our agency, our responsibility.
I like that, finding that balance.
Right.
Well said. Man, this deep dive has really given me a lot to think about.
Me too. It's amazing how something like land use, which sounds, I don't know, kind of boring on the surface,
Right, like who knew?
can lead us down this rabbit hole of satellites and AI
Yeah.
and, like you said, the future of food itself.
It just goes to show there's always more to learn, always something new to explore.
Absolutely.
And speaking of exploring, if you're as captivated by this as we are, definitely check out Farmonaut. They've got some really cool stuff going on.
Yeah, they're definitely worth a look.
And hey, next time you're looking up at the stars, think about this. Some of those tiny points of light, they might just be helping to grow your next meal. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, and until next time, keep exploring.